thanks for joining us this week's edition of Fly Tying Tuesday. We have what has become absolutely our favorite caddis dry fly imitation today. This is Don Puterbaugh's Puterbaugh Caddis, developed back in the 60s, has been fooling trout for over a half decade and will continue to do so for a long time to come. This fly has everything we're looking for in a caddis dry. It is super durable, it's super easy to tie, and it's very buoyant. It stays on top of the water with the foam and the elk hair. Caddis like faster moving water than something like a mayfly, so the buoyancy is extremely important. On the hook today, we have a Tiemco 100, size 18. We'll be tying this in a tan 18. Thread is tan uni 8/0. Typically with elk hair, we're using 6/0, but the way we tie this in allows for a weaker thread. Also helps keep the bulk down, which is important on this bug. We'll go ahead and tie this in a couple eye lengths back. Trim it close. Now we're just going to take this thread back to the barb, just making the underbody here, little thread base, and we'll take it back to the 50% point. That's going to be where we tie in our foam underbody, part of what keeps this fly on top of the water so well. It's a good dry dropper option. What we're going to do here is we're going to tie in our foam. We've got tan 1mm. I like 1mm on a size 18, 1.5mm on a 16, and 2mm on a 12 or 14. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten up my thread a little bit with a clockwise spin. We're going to capture this foam just barely on the tip end of it so we don't cause a lot of bulk. We'll make a few wraps here, then we'll start really pulling that thread towards us tight to make sure this foam is locked in. You can play with your thread to see that it's not going anywhere. We'll cover the butt end of this foam. And then we'll just make a small taper off of that foam so it's smooth for when we tie in our hackle later on. All right, we'll go back to that foam tie-in point, and right now we're going to clip the foam. A good measuring point is to, off the back of the bend, think about a hook gap in length. So I'll go ahead and trim this. It's about what we want. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to tie in our elk hair. This is a light colored elk hair that he likes to use. It's easier to see on the water. It's not bleached, just a light colored elk hair. So we're going to cut a small clump here. You're not going to need a whole lot, especially on something like a size 18 with this fly. Think about, the clump that you cut being about twice the diameter of what you'll be tying in. We've got all these fuzzies, all these errant elk hair fibers everywhere. So we're just going to pinch this clump and pull all this stuff we don't want out. And we'll be patient with this and keep doing it until there aren't any more hairs coming out. This is going to make tying it in, measuring it, everything much more easy. All right, so we're pretty good here. We'll go ahead and stack this in our stacker. Got a medium-sized stacker today. Shouldn't take much since we cleaned it out nice and good. Got a nice stacked clump here. I'm gonna pull this out just with a pinch of our index finger and thumb. Now we're going to switch hands with that same move, just pinching with the index finger and thumb. And this is so that we can measure it. We're going to measure from about an eye length back, and we want this hair to go just slightly past that underbody. So we've got that measurement with our fingers. I'm going to go ahead and switch hands so I can cut it. Now we're going to tie this in at that tie-in point. So we're going to lay this elk hair down so it's right where we measured it. Come down with a loose wrap, another loose wrap, and then on the third one we'll pull it tight towards us. We'll do that again. Be careful with 8/0 though. You don't have quite as much strength as you do with 6, so you're used to using on this. Make sure our foam is back where we want it. All right, that looks good. We've got a wing that just goes slightly beyond that underbody. It's nice and tight. It's not flared out. Now what we're gonna do here is we're gonna trim a taper in the butt ends of this. And we wanna trim a taper so that as we cover this, we've got a tapered thread base for when we tie in our hackle next. I'll just keep covering this stuff up. Building out that taper a little bit. All right, next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna tie in our hackle. Just some brown rooster hackle. It's nice to get a saddle here that has a high barb count from whiting. We can measure this just by wrapping that hackle around the hook. And we see that that's just slightly longer than a hook gap, which is about what we're looking for here. So we'll go ahead and peel off some fibers at the stem so we have a tie-in point and our first wrap is clean. All right, then we'll tie this in with the shiny side of the feather facing us so that it's wrapping the correct way, which is back towards the bend instead of out towards the front. And I like a really heavily hackled Puterbaugh Caddis. Just helps with the buoyancy. So we're basically gonna go wrap to wrap on this right against the previous one. It's gonna be almost no space. And we're just gonna take this down the hook shank. Slid on me a little bit there. So we'll go back. Now we'll capture this. Just a couple of wraps. Cut it off close. You may have some errant hackle here you don't like. Now's the time to clean it up before we whip finish. Sweep all this hackle back a little bit so we don't trap any. Build up a small little thread head here. Caught one or two. There we go. Now all we have left to do is whip finish. About a 4 or 5 turn whip finish here should be good. Making sure we don't trap any hackle when we do that. Pull it back, make sure that whip finish locked in place, cut it close. Trim up anything you don't like. Straighten out my foam a little bit. And that's all there is to it. That's a finished Puterbaugh Caddis. As you can see, super easy. You can fill up your box really quickly with these guys. Spin some up, give us a shout, and if you have any questions, mix up the size, colors. We go from a 12 to an 18, olive, tan, brown, black for the foam. Whatever matches for where you are is best. Thanks for watching.